Good evening, and welcome to the Hero's Breath podcast. I am your ever verbose host, Matthew Huddle.
And Tom Jasinski joining.
It is Tuesday, February 26, 2019. This is episode 15. Tonight we are talking about Rescue from Without.
This podcast, Hero's Breath, is brought to you by the Phi Center. That's phicenter.nyc for those who want to check out our website. Basically, what we're aiming to do is use every potential modality of healing, both traditional and modern, to really optimize people's lives, their health, bring them into a better state, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, you name it. Included in that is, of course, a mind program, proprietary neurofeedback system. I never like to frame it as though we're fixing issues. We're just taking you and your naturally endowed gifts and optimizing. I know you've been a recipient of that. You've definitely grown
Thank you.
Much since you started.
And as I've said on my Mind Program Journals on the YouTube channel, you have to be ready to do the work. It definitely gives you an increase in cognitive function. But at some point I found that kind of dropped off because I was doing so much internal work on myself, and it seemed like the Mind Program was kind of working more on that, helping me break through barriers, have realizations, intense fucking dreams, to get the subconscious, unconscious, and conscious minds to actually kind of interact with each other. So all these little stirrings and rumblings, I don't ignore them as much, and I see them and I start to process them, and it helps me work through things that go back decades. So whatever age you're at, the Mind Program I think is absolutely great for anyone who's willing to put in the work. You're not just going to sit there and watch Netflix. Do not expect the machine to do everything for you.
Consider it a tool. Part of the work that I'm doing, I realize this is almost like a modern day form of shamanism.
Big important shout out right now is to James Morano, jamesmorano.com. MORANO.com. He is our editor in beard. He makes sure we sound good, even though we've given him quite the task. Not just does audio, he does visual editing, photography, videography, drone pilot. He's got an incredible portfolio. He works with all sorts of brands, big brands that we don't get paid enough to talk about. So go check him out. The stage, of course, again, is Rescue from Without. This is the last of the optional phases at the very, very end of the hero's journey. This will happen when the hero is either exhausted or trapped after they complete their ultimate boon and their task, and they need to be rescued. And this is usually performed by an ally, but sometimes circumstantial forces can come into play here. In ancient times, these mechanisms in ancient stories, mythologies, weren't always used because in life you don't usually get these grand last-minute saving rescues, but they do sometimes happen. The reason it's not just like a repeat of supernatural aid is because it becomes its own integrative part of the story, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on. If you live in a more stable part of the world, most likely after you have some sort of major victory in your life, you're not going to need literal rescue from some sort of existential threat. I really hope not, unless of course you live in Chicago or Detroit. No. Sorry, couldn't resist. Just one day. Just give me one. Now, part of the problem with this stage, ancient writers were guilty of this, modern directors can be guilty of this, is using what's called a deus ex machina, which literally translates to God within the machine. It's basically when a writer paints their hero into a corner, can't get them out, and uses some ridiculous fucking mechanism to pull them out of the situation. One of the best or worst examples of deus ex machina was in Jurassic Park. It's amazing because it was like a groundbreaking film. Everybody loved it to the point where there was this horrible deus ex machina at the end and everyone kind of just forgave it because the rest of the movie was fantastic. It's that scene where Dr. Grant and the survivors are running from the raptors, and in the visitor center they're being surrounded by the raptors on all sides, and one of them's about ready to pounce, and all of a sudden the big fucking T-Rex grabs the raptor, throws it around, and kills the other one. Nobody heard it coming. Nobody knows how the fuck it got inside the building. Nobody understands why Steven Spielberg thought it was okay to insult his audience this way. However, a good example of Rescue from Without was at the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Yeah. At the end, the hobbits are stuck on Mount Doom, surrounded by lava, and Gandalf rides in with the eagles and picks them up and carries them away. And people say, why didn't they just ride the eagles there or whatever? It's because it was a summon that Gandalf had at his disposal, but he could only use it in like limited instances. The eagles said they would fight, with Gandalf because things he did if you read the older books. So Gandalf could use them in limited bits. So it worked within the story. It wasn't like Tolkien just pulled it out of his ass. We kind of romanticize Tolkien because he was so goddamn good at writing and being brilliant, but he really did understand the structure, and that's why there aren't too many really good instances of rescue from without it becoming Deus Ex Machina.
Right.
So now you have non-anthropomorphized elements. It's usually like evil villains like got the hero like trapped on the side of the building. It's like, all right, now I'm gonna get you, and then all of a sudden like something falls on them. That's like an example of a rescue from the elements themselves. The film Avatar, the way Cameron had rescue from without used in that film is that he had kind of blended the two. So you have Jake Sully leading the Na'vi against Quaritch's Earth forces. Quaritch was determined to bomb the Well of Souls, which is basically the heart of Awa. There's this great tree inside that they can connect to and everything. It looked like everything was going to be lost. Then all of a sudden, all the life forms of the planet come after the humans. All the banshees and all the dire wolves, and like everybody came after. Everything came out and just fought it back. Now, in one sense, you could think of Awa being this consciousness, this goddess overmind, pulling all these animals into hell. Or these animals, in a sense, acted like antibodies and took care of the humans. Either way, it's a bit of an open interpretation.
It really can go both ways since everyone is so deeply interconnected. That division between conscious overseer and
the physical body's
individual
response.
forms that work in a community.
Well, it's like you've said all the time, the body has its own wisdom. To backtrack a little bit, now earlier in the film, Neytiri took Jake to another sacred site, the Tree of Voices, and there was a whole bunch of these smaller versions of the same tree that's in the Well of Salt. He was able to connect his little cue to the tendrils of those trees and hear the voices of the ancestors. Later on in the film, Dr. Grace Augustine, the mentor character, had been shot, and Jake takes her to the Na'vi, and they take her avatar body and her body, and they try to like connect it so they could transfer her consciousness permanently, but she was dying at that point. And in between, she is in the Tree of Souls, the Na'vi are all connected and singing and making this like energy move throughout. It was a beautiful scene. And as she's kind of like hanging in between life and death, she says to Jake, I'm with Awa. She's real, I see her there. And then she dies. And Jake, of course, channels all his grief into rousing the tribes for the big battle against the humans. The next is a montage of him going to all the different tribes as far as he could fly to get them all involved in this fight. And right before the battle, he goes back to that tree in the Well of Souls, and he says he has to give Awa a heads up. He basically prays, and he connects his cue to the tree, and he says, if Grace is with you, look into her memories. See the world we come from. There's no green there. They killed their mother, and they're going to do the same here. More sky people are going to come. They're going to come like a rain that never ends unless we stop them. Look, you chose me for something. I will stand and fight. You know I will. But I need a little help here. Now, Neytiri had overheard his prayer and says to Jake, our great mother does not take sides, Jake. She protects only the balance of life. And he kind of shrugs and he's like, well, it was worth a shot. But it was worth a shot, and Ava did respond because Jake was not focused on the battle itself, but why the battle was needed. So to the Na'vi, they only hunted and killed out of necessity. They fought another tribe because that other tribe was, trying to take their stuff. Like, it was very simple relationship with death. But humans, on the other hand, were well familiar with genocide, and the Na'vi never were. He knew how far destruction could go, and that there was a need to bring force to bear in this case. He understood the scale of it, and Neytiri didn't. He proved that throughout the film, he was willing to act on his moral conviction. Despite the fact that he was a Marine back on Earth, he said that he never really did things for the sake of violence. He always said that he was always looking for something worth fighting for, and he found it on Pandora. He discovered that he was able to be part of something greater than himself, so when he fought for it, the animals appeared to turn the tide of battle because it wasn't to preserve him as the hero, it was to preserve and protect all life, which Jake was part of. He was part of that process. It wasn't about saving the hero, it was about the hero being within the process of saving life itself. He was just a component in a much larger system. He stepped outside of himself, realized that it wasn't about him. So he became more than just a man. He became the symbol that a hero is meant to be, just like Captain America.
You mentioned that he was always searching for his why, his purpose, which is honestly why we're all here. It's like figuring out what it is that's fulfilling us. If you look at Dan Beuttner's studies, so he's the guy who came out with the whole...
Oh, blue zones, right.
Blue zones,
Okay,
right.
yeah. Explain what blue zones are.
I'll start there.
Yeah, let's start. We do this to ourselves.
I know.
Oh wait, we have an audience.
Yeah. Basically, these are areas that Dan Beuttner saw the largest amount of groups that had the greatest amount of centenarians. I won't remember all of them, but you have in Japan the island of Okinawa, you have Sardinia, I believe Costa Rica is one of them.
There's a lot of mountain villages. One thing I do remember is a lot of them high elevation. All throughout the Caucasus Mountains, I think he said he found like 3 villages.
Some of the things that he saw that were almost universally found throughout all these different blue zones, because it's not just that they were living long, they were still fully functional. They were living well. Among the reasons, this incredible sense of community that they all shared was, of course, eating a diet that was native, that was local, seasonal. He'll mention that they had a lot of legumes, fibrous diets. Of course, not
vegan.
You
You were dancing around it. But largely fish, actually. I believe.
Right, and they have periods of fast. They don't eat excessively. The Japanese, for example, have this term, harahachibu, where they basically eat until they're about 80% full. Among all these other different reasons was this incredible sense of purpose that these communities felt, these individuals felt, right? There was a reason for being. Purpose is an essential component of life, and we need that.
You see, this is why I keep him around. Because without Tom, I'd be looking for a forest and all I'd see are the fucking trees.
It goes both ways, man.
We're definitely gonna have to get a shirt, just like a bunch of trees and just says fucking trees.
Fucking trees, where's the forest? Each one of us is called upon to do that in our lives. We feel this almost innate drive to seek out our purpose. But it's not hard. I honestly think that if you can really get quiet and get centered and figure out what it is you're sort of coming into this world endowed with, your natural gifts and talents and passions and the things that drive you, excite you, that gets you moving, that lights you up. If you can take and isolate those things and then find a way to somehow use that in service. Another common theme in this is service. Like he was now outside of himself. He was part of this greater, grander scheme of things. I'm talking about Jake Beck, by the way. He needed to really step outside of himself. He's doing this for the greater good. In service, we find meaning. That's where we find it most. Taking our skills, being able to actualize and realize those natural talents, being able to express them fully. Whether you're an artist, whether you're a musician, whether you're an entrepreneur looking to start something. We're looking to be of service with our naturally endowed gifts and talents. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want the world to also acknowledge these things. When we can wholeheartedly, fully commit to expressing this and being of service, the world, the fucking universe, everything kind of aligns to make sure that you get to where you need to get to.
Yeah, it was funny. Tom just had to say, is like, oh, I'm still talking about Jake Sully, because Steve Rogers always wanted to be in service. Even before he was a super soldier, he tried repeatedly to enlist in the U.S. Army, even though he had asthma and high blood pressure and like rickets and like a whole bunch of other shit. Not that dissimilar to Joseph Pilates, but that's a rant for another time. He wanted to enlist even though he knew he would probably die from it. He didn't care. He wanted to be of service. He wanted to go because he had that internal drive. The MCU film Captain America: The First Avenger was flawless, especially in this context. Dr. Erskine, he said, do you want to be a soldier so that you could kill Nazis? Steve had the best reply. He says, I don't want to kill anyone. I just don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from. And so once he got into the program, he had at some point threw himself on top of what he thought was a live grenade to save everybody else. Then after the experiment turned him superhuman and Dr. Erskine was assassinated, Steve was discarded as a viable weapon. He was supposed to be part of a line of soldiers, this great, ambitious, super soldier army, and they only got one of him, so they kind of threw him away. Some senators decided to like dress him up and make him Captain America to peddle war bond. He thought he was still doing some good. He even risked that silly, pitiful role to rescue his friend's captured unit, to save Bucky and all them. He was not looking to be a martyr. It was the outcome of the fight never mattered to him, because the value of the fight was to be found in the act of confronting evil itself. As he put it, if you start running away, they never let you stop. And so, as a result, Steve never did get to stop. What happened at the climax of the film, he achieves the ultimate boon, he defeats the Red Skull, but in order to protect the world, he crashed the Hydra bomber into the ice, and he got himself frozen. And nearly 70 years later, S.H.I.E.L.D. revives him. And then he's in a New York that's basically so foreign it might as well have been another planet. He was basically cast through time like a leaf in the wind, and he skips Acts 3 and 1 of his hero's journey. He goes right back to Act 2, Initiation, where he crosses the first threshold all over again without his say-so. And then he would start that journey again. With each film, if you read the comics, with each reboot with everything else, Steve would sacrifice himself not just for the cliched greater good, but for the fact that he had to serve as what a good man should be. And as his reward, maybe his curse, he had to continue to serve that role for all of humanity for basically well past his lifespan. It wouldn't be advisable for you to expect rescue in your life if you fail to do any less. People have all these expectations of what or where and when and how things should be. And I'm not going to tell everyone what to do, but you need to be focused not on your victory, but on your growth, on your development, on the process of being the hero. And understand that you can't expect rescue. This, again, is kind of inverse, like we were talking about in the last one. The magic flight, the running away, you really have to probably take that time to pace yourself. In this respect, again, you think about why this mechanism is so rarely told in story. Because you can't expect it in life. What happens is when you go into life, when you go to serve this role as the hero, as the symbol of what a of a good man could be. Then you become something more. You're tossing aside your selfish desires. You're not just being this little thing. That's when God, life, the universe, the gods, whatever, will save you, because you've said, well, fuck the victory, fuck the outcome. This has to be done. And if somebody else has to carry on the work after me, or if I have to change my plans, or whatever it is, I know I'm talking abstract. We'll get to the solid stuff soon. But it's when you put yourself aside and you think about what needs to be done for the role you serve in life, not just the greater good, but what is the hero. If you're willing to be that, then maybe that confluence of strange events might come to help you.
The moment you get out of your own way, because life is a process.
Life is a process.
We just need to live it. And we do so wholeheartedly, fully embrace it. Everything aligns to make it work. When you are showing up 100% with enthusiasm, that enthusiasm is contagious. People want to support you. People want to see you succeed.
Yeah, it's weird like that. I didn't expect it. As I started moving on this journey, I can't say that I've never wished for divine intervention. We've all thought about, maybe I'll play that one lottery ticket. That's the one that gives me all the money I need to do the thing I want to do, or maybe I'll find that one perfect woman who would fix me and all my fuck-upiness. But these are just fantasies. You don't spend too much time and money on them. That's why you don't see this a lot in story. And especially when you do, it's often ridiculous. Is to teach us the lesson is that, sometimes you get extra help, but don't count on it. Put in the work, like you said. Be prepared to lose and be prepared to learn. And my friends, that's exactly why Tom and I have changed the company slogan to expect nothing, earn everything. This stage could have jumped, right? You could go right from apotheosis to rescue from without. Because as you become that ideal, as you get that moment where it all clicks and you're willing to take that extra evolutionary leap, that's when all of this starts to come to the surface. I think you were asking me before, it's like, what kind of concrete examples could we leave for people to think about? It would be great if, you have a startup and you need, a few $100,000 and you want to make this thing and do this stuff or build the software. It'd be great if an angel investor came along and said, hey, you know what? Let me leave you $500K, and I only ask for a 5% return, and I'm just going to be a silent partner, so don't worry about me. Wouldn't that be fucking great to get a whale like that? But you're not going to get that. That does not happen. Not saying it couldn't, but it's not going to.
No. But the thing is, it's really all about mindset. Like, that's what this is coming down to.
Funny, all these things just seem to come down to mindset, don't they?
Expect nothing, which means you gotta bust ass, you gotta put in 110%. You gotta do all the work, whether it's internal, whether it's marketing, whether it's whatever kind of work you're engaged in, right? Self-development or otherwise. You gotta put in 110% and not expect anything or anyone in the world to show up except for you. But often fucking time, when you're putting in all that work, you will see dividends in putting in the work, in engaging in the process. You are meeting people, you're engaging in conversations, you're networking, you're putting yourself out there. And the more you're putting yourself out there, the more you're pulling things in. More aid will just naturally filter in, but it's only a consequence of you putting in the work to begin with.
It's like an Ouroboros, the symbol of the snake eating its tail, which is actually where the wedding band comes from. It's a symbol of eternity, but it's also, like we've talked about before, self-fulfilling prophecy. I was talking to somebody before, it's like, we keep talking about all these fucking cliches that come up, but they're so true, and that's the annoying part. I wish they weren't true so we could write them off.
Fucking cliche,
But otherwise it would be a cliche, especially when they sound like they come from some sort of half-baked yoga instructor. Yeah, you have a self-fulfilling prophecy of yourself. When you say, oh, this isn't gonna happen, I don't know if you call it guilty pleasure, but I love going on YouTube and watching these game guys, these pickup artists, because there's a lot of really, and I dismissed it at first. Again, I was feminist at one point, so I guess I still had some of that stupid programming in my head, and I didn't think there was any value in it. And then I eventually shut up and I started doing some research, and I learned that there's a lot of value in that pickup artist world because it's a lot about the mindset. So if you go into it, the mindset is, oh, well, she's probably gonna say no, and look, she's a total 10, where does she go out and meet? Dude, you couldn't get a 4 or 3 with that attitude. It's so funny watching these pickup guys. A couple of them are overweight, significantly overweight, hairy, balding, ginger, and yet they leave the club with these total 11s because they exude this force. They become part of the process. I just downloaded the audiobook, The Obstacle is the Way. When you kind of surrender to being that process, he was giving the example of George Clooney used to go into auditions hoping to get the role, hoping that somebody would give him fame. He eventually realized that it's a tough process for the people on the other side of the table. Directors and producers, they just want this fucking process over with. They want to get the movie started. People have jobs. They can't just sit here and look for the right actor or actress all the goddamn day. So it's a grueling process this for everyone. He thought, what if I go into it with the attitude that I'm solving their problem? I'm going to be their guy. I'm going to learn whatever accents I have to learn. I'm going to learn the role. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to put in the work. And I exude that. He didn't say, hey, I'll put in all the work. I'll be your bitch. He came in with the attitude that I'm going to... He carried it with him, that I'm going to learn every accent. I'm going to learn every role. I'm going to know the history of the character inside and out. I'm going to be your guy. I'm going to be smooth. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be whoever you want me to be. I'm going to fix this so you don't have to sit behind that fucking table all goddamn day. He went in with that attitude. That's the attitude you bring with you to game. That's the attitude you bring with you to business. That's the attitude you bring with you everywhere you go. You have to be completely, fully immersed in it. And then, yeah, like you said, it just rolls into itself.
It's so necessary for us to actually be doing the work to put us there. It only starts with us being very clear about what that work actually is. An incredible degree of self-awareness is so necessary here. And following through, committing to it. Without that commitment, without diving in, it's not going to work. You said this idea of surrender. Like,
oh, come on, that's bullshit.
Surrender to fucking being you, because guess what? Your chances are you're not you. Chances are you're living by society's rules. You're living by the expectations placed upon you. You're living by all of these other external factors that are guiding you to be who you think you ought to be, but deep down know you truly are not. So surrender to just being yourself and then watch the magic unfold. As you do so, honestly, just put in the work to constantly make every single day a little better than the previous. As an individual, keep growing, keep pushing yourself, keep learning. Do not expect anything to just be given to you, but in releasing yourself from the expectation, guess what? There's a freedom there, but then it actually happens. How often have you heard in like some of the more woo-woo circles, put the intention out there, but don't be attached?
You're not doing the voice right. Put the intention out, but don't be attached to the intention. Let the universe guide you to it.
I can't bring myself to do
No,
it.
See, Tom's afraid of the repercussions. I don't care who unfollows me.
But the truth is there.
It is there, and that's kind of why we say it like tongue-in-cheek. And I think that's, again, in large respect, why when the stage is written, it's written somewhat ridiculously. You have to be a little ridiculous about it to think about how the kind of strange interventionist things come in. Again, I keep thinking about all these pickup videos that I've watched. Going back to what George Clooney had said, this is a good example for guys, but anyone could extrapolate from it. If you go into, let's say, a club or a bar, and you're thinking to yourself, these girls, they want somebody to come up to them, they want somebody, maybe take them home, whatever the situation is, they have a problem they want solved. They want to go out and meet someone. But what do they really want? Do they really want to sit around and talk about the philosophy of how our biology moves itself along by putting these cravings into our bloodstream to go out and fuck and procreate? No, nobody wants to fucking talk about the mechanism of it. They just want to have a good time. They want you to say something witty. They want you to say something charming. They want you to sweep them off their feet. They want you to be engaged in this rapturous moment. If we talked about how David Data, it talks about the energy of male and female. They want to be nature. You have to act on nature. You have to get involved in this process. You solve their problem. You go and think about, oh, I want an ego boost. I want a pretty girl to like me. Or, oh, I want to get my Jimmy waxed or whatever. You don't think about you. Think about you're going to solve that blonde's problem over there at the end of the bar.
Servicing her.
See, I wasn't going to fucking say that.
It's the idea behind
the energy you bring into it.
Exactly. Of course, it's absolutely applicable to business and anything else.
Oh, especially business.
You're coming with the intention to solve the other party's problem. To take yourself out of it, be of service. Find what the problem is. Try to address that. I'll give you another one from the pickup artist game.
See, I knew I'd get them to admit it.
You want to make it easy for them to be able to say yes, because there's still that friction where they want to say yes. She may have the desire, but there is this community, this environment that kind of inhibits her. You want to address that, you want to make it easy. Invite her to a movie at your place. Obviously, she fucking knows it's not going to be a movie. At least she has the comfort, the getaway. She can tell her friends, oh, hey, me and so-and-so are just going to go around the block and grab a slice.
There's this one guy, Todd V Dating. He's really, really good. He frames it up as, you don't want to create an adversarial situation where one party wins and one party loses. Okay. You want to create a situation where both parties get what they want. My daughter, oh my God.
Could not have transitioned from pickup fucking artist
to my daughter. She's amazing. By the way, this is why my ex-wife says my brain is like an iPod with a monkey mashing the shuffle button on and off. You never will know what's going to come out. But that's actually the art of the deal. And I pointed this out to her. I made sure she understood what she did. Picked her up last week from the sitter. I said, I'm hungry. You hungry? She says, yes. I said, well, I just worked out at the gym. I need a little extra protein. I'm in the mood for chicken. She says, yeah, I want Chinese chicken. I said, that's a little heavy for me. I want something a little lighter. So let's go somewhere else where we can, maybe get something different. And she says, how about we go to the mall? There's all different kinds of food in the food court. And I said, yeah. That's a great compromise, because there's Chinese food and there's other stuff I could get. I said, Fiona, I said, that was amazing. And she said, and I get to play in the play place. I'm like, see? It was great because I had to compromise a little because I hate the fucking mall and you know that. But at the same time, it was a rainy day, so I'm like, I get to run off your energy before taking you home. We both get the food we want. I said, in that case, there's a little sacrifice for both of us. Everyone wins. I'm teaching the art of the deal to a 7-year-old. Eventually, I'll get her the president's
it was
book.
brilliant. She does it intuitively.
This is the whole circular point that I wanted to come around to, is that really without, as you say, the societal bullshit, we will naturally do these kinds of things. We will naturally have this kind of interaction. Yeah, kids can butt heads and be stubborn with each other. As Jordan Peterson said, if you let kids solve their own problems, they'll figure it out. When parents intervene, that's why you have a whole generation of kids who can't solve their own problems without government regulation. You have to let kids hammer these problems out. This one wants to play that game, that one wants to play this game. You let them argue, you let them fight, you let them come to a compromise. Eventually, kids always figure this out. Humans naturally work this stuff out. When the parents come in and swoop in and say, oh, no, you have to let them play with that, and you're just gonna fuck it up. This is the rescue we don't need, which actually I didn't think to write in. You know what? Let's go back to this. You don't always need to be rescued.
No, don't expect it. Don't anticipate. It's great when it comes, but just go in with the intention of fucking like putting all your effort into it.
You have a lot more pride when you know that you've accomplished something. I mean, our ancestors, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, our grandparents are like, you're bitching about not being able to get a date. We were all fighting Nazis when I was your age. Their grandparents would have been like, fighting Nazis in comfortable tanks? We were fighting Indians on wagon trains. We go back far enough. Our ancestors were willing to. They had no choice to put in the work. It was put in the work or starve. Here, we've got everything so comfortable. I don't want to sound like a twat, but our comfortable society becomes our chains. It's not just a metaphor.
At work today, one of the patients there, he's a war vet. Of course, we somehow got onto the discussion and topic of how today's youth is just coddled. He and I share the same exact concerns. Individuals who are not able to place themselves outside of comfort and seek discomfort and actually pursue it knowing that there's growth to be had. It's tragic, really worrisome in terms of thinking about the future of where this country and this world is headed to. When you have all of these individuals who have no self-awareness, very few self-regulating mechanisms, they have this inability to engage thoughtfully, constructively, to actually welcome adversity.
It's a foreign concept. Their parents always swooped right in and rescued them on the smallest little inconvenience instead of letting them go through the pain. I mean, not to fault parents completely, because you don't want your kids to suffer.
If we just place ourselves in, say, the position of the gods, let's say we're putting ourselves in the position of like the Greek pantheon.
That's fine, that's my pantheon anyway.
You are much more likely to want to help the guy who's doing everything he possibly could. All right, he fell, now we can pick him up. But you don't want to help the guy who's like not even bothering
sitting on his ass saying, "Gods, give me grain." You might want to plant it first.
Plant your seeds, sow your seeds, and you'll reap the harvest. If you're putting in the work, external forces, even though we say expect nothing, they will usually come. Just by nature of doing what you need to do, you're placing yourself into situations and places where you're more likely to be able to receive.
When you put in the work, you can sometimes save yourself anyway, because you build up the strength. You become your own hero. I don't know why we haven't talked about this show at all. Stargate SG-1.
Probably because I haven't watched it.
You bastard. There's this episode where the team had traveled through the Stargate to this other world. Maybe I shouldn't even talk about this. It's kind of complicated. There's this backstory that these two types of aliens had this like agreement not to interfere with certain cultures within certain boundaries. You know, they had contracts or whatever. It turns out our Earth team had screwed something up, and this world could die because of what they did. So then they tried to fix the problem, and it didn't seem like it was going to work. But it turns out that the good aliens, because they had the technology to fix it, and they did. It was something to do with the sun, if I remember correctly. And they did fix it, but then later on at the end of the episode, the scientist person goes, wait a second, we screwed up. Our calculations were way off. This wasn't supposed to work. This shouldn't have worked. They realized that because they tried to make it seem like they did. Then from the outside, those good aliens didn't violate their contract with the other aliens because it looked like the humans did it. So they made it look like the humans did it, even though they were the ones who fixed the sun and saved the other inhabitants. So it kind of reminded me of that, because in that sense, those good aliens are actually posing as gods, because the inhabitants of that world were really kind of primitive. I'm glad you used that illustration. When we look at our lives spiritually or agnostically or whatever, we get so wrapped up into ourselves, talking about game and talking about solving other people's problems, but pull that perspective out even further. And you want to think about how you are as that little sim character moving across the board. You know, if you think about Sims in terms of like Sims Online, that's a huge map. That's a lot of different characters. Each avatar is, for each player. Each player is concerned with their own avatar. And yet, in that world, or World of Warcraft or whatever, you can trade, you can help each other go on quests and do all sorts of things. We're the most important character in our own story. But I forgot what it was. I don't think it was a TED Talk. Somebody had said, you're the hero of your own story, but you're the mentor of somebody else's. You have to help somebody else get over their own hurdles. And that will in turn help yours. I write this stuff because it kind of helps me work through my own shit. But I hope to be able to give people other experiences to reflect off of for themselves. You know, it serves my purpose to do these things. I think it was Thomas Sowell said that before capitalism, man became wealthy by plundering his fellow man. After capitalism, man become wealthy by serving his fellow man, by being of service, by putting something out there, by putting something of value and hoping that the market will reward you with money. That's when people say, oh, I value what you've put in. I value the work you've done. Here's some money. And that in turn ends up feeding your quest. You go through another cycle. It's like, okay, I got up to this point now. I could scale up my business. I could do the Grant Cardone 10xing it, you know? We talked about it before. I hate when you get these advertisements. They're telling you about, oh, you know, you could start this online business selling tube socks on Amazon. Well, I don't fucking want to sell tube socks on Amazon. I'm not passionate about tube socks on Amazon. I'm passionate about this stuff. By the way, you can go onto Amazon through our affiliate links. Just throw that out there. The important part is that it's about what you're passionately engaged in. The service you're providing for your fellow man. If you want to get wealthy, if you want to get better, if you want to get more women or men or whatever, when you go out to solve other people's problems, to be the part of the process that helps other people get through their process, that's when the reward comes. You know what, we're 15 episodes in. I don't know if we're going to have thousands of downloads or millions of downloads at any point, but you and I are still working on putting this content out. Not because of the monetary reward, but because this is just something we have to do. I am speaking for myself, and I know you can echo it. This is a fight worth fighting for.
Yeah, and it's personally fulfilling. That's why it's so rewarding. Actually, just to build on what you were saying earlier, we're all the heroes of our own journeys. I think we briefly sort of touched upon this in one of the early episodes, but at the same time, everyone's walking their own path, and we play a different role. And so sometimes we show up as that mentor, and others show up as that mentor for us. At times, maybe we're that external aid, or this help from without, all in this intricately interwoven web of relations.
Kind of as a blow to the ego, we could be part of somebody's road of trials too. Even though we may be the best intention. Like, think about the worst person you know. Maybe they're a drug addict or whatever. You stand in opposition to what they want. Especially, you know, drug addict's a good example. You can't enable a drug addict and expect them to get better. You have to say no. You have to turn them down. You have to report them to the cops. You have to do the things that would eventually get them to fix their fucking life. So the person who's just that nasty person at the office who leeches off of other people's work and credit and doesn't pull their own weight. You being an obstacle to them might seem harsh at first, but if that is the point that they realize what kind of an asshole they are and they turn their life around, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Not your problem. It's theirs. But yeah, maybe you could be part of the road of trials that they need. You know, you frame it positively. Let's frame it, quote, negatively, because it's not really a negative if you're willing to learn from it.
And the reverse is also true. Someone else is a part of your own road of trials. You have plenty of room for own personal growth.
As we come towards the end of this section, just remember, you know, the rescue from without is not going to usually happen. When you work towards what is important, when you work towards your goal, no matter what it is, you get stronger, you get better. Most of the time you can save yourself. And when there's those small synchronistic moments of intervention, then you can count on those happening because you were part of the process of growth, not just for yourself, but for other people. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, expect nothing. Earn everything.
That sums it up perfectly.
I'm not taking all the credit for this one, Tom. I appreciate you being here, as always.
And I appreciate being here.
Want to do another ingratiating shout out to our beautiful sponsors, the Phi Center, for being my aid and rescue, and that for many people as well. And another shout out to James Morano for being our rescue. We would not have gotten anywhere close to this level without him. So thank you, James.
At the same time, guys, thank you. If you ever feel compelled, we're mentioning books and articles and resources and products. It's only because, again, we personally use and believe them, and it's where we've gotten a lot of our own inspiration and wisdom from. And the knowledge and the process that we're going through, the education that we're seeking. We're sharing all that, and we're going to link everything
in the YouTube
page.
channel. Yeah, of course there'll be a shortened version of this podcast on YouTube. So if you go into the description, everything that's been mentioned has an Amazon link. If you click on that link, buy the book, the DVD, whatever, we'll get a little tiny percentage of that. And that'll just help keep the lights on for us, help us get some new equipment and everything. It's not going to, like, you know, hookers and blow. No promises. And also the same links will be available at the bottom of each blog, which will go up on the website the same day as the video, the same day as the podcast. So that's that for now. This is Matt.
And Tom.
Signing off and reminding you, expect nothing,
Earn
earn everything. Good night, everybody. Boom.